William Ernest Henley was a British poet, writer, critic, and editor in late Victorian period. He wrote several books of poetry, but his famous work is Invictus Poem. He received doctoral degree in law, but he unable to secure the position of professor of English literature at the University of Edinburgh. He associated with British literary magazine, the Pall Mall magazine, in which he wrote articles about shortcomings or faults. Henley was hired to edit the London magazine, which was a society paper. He was a friend of Robert S. Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson's character Long John Silver from Treasure Island, inspired by Henley real life. According to Stevenson later, after the publication of Treasure Island, he confessed Long John Silver character, the idea of maimed man was entirely taken from you. His daughter Margaret Emma Henley inspired to J.M. Barrie's play Peter Pan in order to choice of the name of a heroine Wendy character. Lloyd Osborne described he had unimaginable fire and vitality. He swept one off one's feet, sad on his thinking, sacrifice, and efforts of writing. At the age of 12, Henley caught in bone tuberculosis disease and lost his left leg. Henley moved to London to develop himself as a journalist, but his work over the next 8 years was interrupted by long stays in hospital. Because his right feet also have same disease, he goes through second amputations of the leg, which was only option to save his life. Now finally he lost his both feet. Hanley fell down from a railway carriage, and this accident became a cause of his death. Hanley spent 3 years in hospital from 1873 to 1875. During this period, he penned down several poems and published as in hospital. Invictus, one of his hospital poem written in 1875, published in 1888. Hospital poem based on Hanley's observation on the plights of patients in the hospital's bed around him. The poem was published in 1888 in the first volume of poem Book of Verse with no title. Title added by or title given by Arthur Quiller-Couch in the Oxford Book of English Verses. Poem identified as artistic motif, poet as a patient, also called anticipated modern poetry, written in free verse containing abrasive narrative shift and intermonologue. Title Invictus is a Latin word which means unconquerable, undefeatable. A speaker of Invictus exemplifies the Victorian understanding of the Roman philosophy of Stoicism. Poem is about courage in the face of death and holding on to one's own dignity despite the indignities of life. Poem focuses on the human spirit and its ability to overcome adversity. Poem begin with a metaphorical night, a night that is like the darkness of hell. In spite of these, speaker feels gratitude toward God, if any exist, for granting him power and bless to fight with the problem, and hence he become unconquerable soul. Also talk about past life challenges and difficulties, but he never complaining about his discomfort of life. Poet says, life is still beating me, but did not decrease my pride. He expressed his thought with beautiful line, my head is bloody but unbowed. इट मीन्स मेरा सिर लहू लहान है लेकिन झुका हुआ नहीं है. Next, speaker looks beyond the present of anger and sadness to the future. Here, future signifies death, which hangs over the present like a terrifying shadow. यहाँ पोएट कहते हैं कि मौत एक सच है जो हमारे आज पर खौफनाक साए की तरह लटका हुआ है, मतलब अटल है. मुझे एक वो शेर याद आता है, मौत का एक दिन मुअय्यन है, नींद क्यों रात भर नहीं आती, विच इज़ रिटन बाय मिर्ज़ा गालिब. Very beautiful line. Come to the point. Once again, a speaker affirmed that the truth of the inevitable suffering does not frighten him or the poet. In the final stanza, a speaker represents himself carefree about life challenges and afterlife. The word is straight the gate and punishment, alluding biblical passage in which a narrow gate represent extreme difficulty and horrible event lies in the book of fate. Speaker only careful about controls of their own inner life, like a ship captain, and said in change of their inner lives unconquerable element, the soul. Poem end with immortal lines. I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. It means I decide my destiny and controlling. I am on my own, not a puppet of God. Suffering and resilience. Resilience word means capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. Invictus poem is about resilience in the face of the suffering. This resilience comes from the courage to embrace life and refuse despair. Poem is also a balm against any future instance of adversity. Poem has a repetitive structure that emphasizes the recurring nature of adversity, the constancy of inner strength. Each stanza open with description of adversity and close with affirmation of emotional fortitude, such as unconquerable soul. That is, a speaker says, resilience remain untouched by life difficulties. Poem tells us about personal strength in fate of hardship, rather complaining about life adversity of the God. Also, a speaker of the poem state philosophy in assertive manner, which means to arouse and inspire, which can be seen in the final line of the poem. I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. Master and captain word associated with pride and glory and idea of freedom. In a nutshell, poem acts like a rallying cry made to inspire oneself rather than lamentation on difficulties of life. Agnosticism is a belief. A person neither believe nor disbelieve in a god or religion doctrine. Here talks about speakers' faith in self-empowerment. Also discuss adversity within the context of God's uncertain existence. In the first stanza, poet using word gods and soul, which suggesting a speaker want to engage with religion. But in the next moment, he expressed his doubt of God existence and said, whatever gods may be, instead of thanking God for my unconquerable soul. We might have classified beginning of the poem as a prayer or a devotional poem and evoking divine goodness and religious imagery of hell with the word the pit. Poem end with valorous tone. It shows ambiguity. A speaker make choices for the soul or a speaker retain faith in the soul. It's remain unclear. Invictus invokes the Christian idea of the fate and suffering while refusing to commit Christianity. Let's have a look symbol. Then after Poetic Devices. First is the soul. Here, soul symbolizes whatever it is within oneself that cannot be defeated by life hardship. It represents something like inner strength. In the context of late 19th century in England, Christians Christianity versus science, Christianity versus science, soul as representing some core inner strength given to one by nature rather than God. Second is the scroll. On earthly level, a scroll here can be taken as the legal documentation of one's punishment for crime, but here, fate and fatalism, central concept in which a scroll symbolizes punishment as inevitable hardship of life. Also poem, thematic concern with fate and its ongoing engagement with religion. Poem refer speakers individual life within the context of a cosmic forces. It contrasts between fate and self-determination. Poem written in enjambment form in which line breaks happened at natural pauses and establish conceptual relationship between two lines in a question. Enjambment. Poem written in enjambment form in which line breaks happen at natural pauses and establish conceptual relationship between two lines in question. Anaphora is the repetition of word or phrase in poetic lines in final two lines of the poems where we can see the use of device. Anaphora creates a rhetorical swell, a kind of victory bell, or a speaker's unended victory or despair. Ascenditon. It's a Greek word which means unconnected. It creates more concise dramatic effect in a text. It used for shortened sentence and focus on its meaning. We find devices used in the line number 13 and 14 in the final stanza. Grammatically, there should be a nor between there's these line. Grammatically, there should be a nor word between these lines where a speaker saying that these doesn't matter nor does that. Also poem filled with simile, metaphor, alliteration, personification and allusion of the King James Bible and etc. Poem written in free verse. Poem consists on 4 rhymed quatrain stanza, each line finished with and stop. Poem written in iambic tetrameter. In final line, speaker express self-possession by avoiding poetic rules and meter. Poem employs ABAB rhyme scheme. Rhyming scheme for entire poem is ABAB, CD, EF, GH. Also we find internal rhyme and internal slant rhyme in the poem. Poem references in literature. I am the captain of my soul. Title of the poem written by Australian poet Gwen Harwood. The line from the Invictus poem Bloody but Unbow was quoted in Dorothy Sayers' novel Clouds of Witness. Pilgrim Regress, a book written by C.S. Lewis, included a quote from the last two lines of Invictus poem. I cannot put myself under anyone's order. I must be the captain of my soul and the master of my fate, but thank you for your offer. In Oscar Wilde's The Profundis letter, he reminisces the Invictus poem, I was no longer the captain of my soul. In biographical film Invictus, a story is based on book Playing the Enemy by John Carlin. but the title borrowed from Invictus poem. I know why the cage bird sing. Book written by Maya Angelou. It's an autobiographical volume in which Invictus poem quoted in the chapter 2. Joy Orton play the ruffian on the stair based on the title theme and open with Henley's poem Madam's Life's Peace in Bloom as an epigraph. Pro Reggae Nostro, patriotic poem written by Henley during the First World War. From the poem, a line, what have I done for you, England, my England? What is there I would not do, England, my own? Poem is a reference in the title England, My England, a short story collection written by D.H. Lawrence. And another reference is England, Their England, satirical novel written by A.G. MacDonnell. Books and poems written by William Ernest Henley. Voluntaries for an East London Hospital, published in 1887. Books of Verses, published in 1888. Slang and its Analogues, Past and Present, a dictionary, published in 1890. Lyra Heroica, published in 1891. Song of the Sword and Other Verses, published in 1893. Hawthorne and Lavender with Other Verses, published in 1901. In Hospital, collection of poem, published in 1903. Echoes of Life and Death, collection of 47 poem, published in 1908. And a poem, A Song of Speed, published 2 months before his death. He also written a ballad of dead actors, and another is of the nothingness of things.